This is the CritRPG Pubcrawl, where we talk with all the publishers in the progression fantasy and LitRPG space. Hi and welcome everyone to the CritRPG Pubcrawl. Today with Aethon again, this time with Rhett Bruno, one of the owners of Aethon. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. Thank you very much for asking. Yeah, you're a hard man to get a hold of because you seem kind of busy with all the announcements you've been doing on the Aethon Discord. There isn't the day where a new announcement is coming up, and I'm pretty excited for you. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're busier than ever. So, like you said, there's usually multiple releases and announcements per week. So we're always busy, but you could always find us on there or Facebook or somewhere. We try to answer everyone.
Yeah, pretty cool. So without further ado, I guess we could just delve right into it. I mean, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can't see this because I'm doing this without video, but the wall behind Rhett is completely plastered with very, very cool framed book covers. So I don't think many people know that about you, especially in the Discord/Royal Road community, but you are also an author. Do you want to talk about how your road went from being an author, writing, and then starting Aethon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes together, but I've been writing forever. Mm-hmm. That's sort of how I started. I think I published my first crappy fantasy book at like 16 with a vanity press back before Kindle publishing or anything existed. So they took advantage of young me. But again, that's a good learning experience. But yeah, so I've always been writing. During college, got really into science fiction and wrote my first science fiction series, The Circuit, which is my first published series with a large independent publisher. I went the traditional route, had an agent and everything, worked my way up to doing a book with Random House. And as I was doing that, I just saw so many things they were doing wrong. I was with imprint of Random House that was digital focused. And so every publisher of the big four has really tried that angle, and they get handicapped in a lot of ways with how they can price and everything compared to indies. And that was like 2015, and 2014 is when you see sort of when the Kindle Unlimited indie publishing spike happened in science fiction and fantasy, like when stuff really started to take off. You look at Martian and other things like that were actually released independently, and KU just picked them up and pushed the crap out of them, and they became hits. And so it was as I was releasing my book with Random House, which is Titanborn, my Children of Titan series, I started to really explore the indie world. Through anthologies and short stories, I met a lot of people in that world and started a newsletter promotional platform for science fiction to help other authors, help myself. Because one of the things I started to realize is in traditional publishing, like you sign with Random House and you're all excited, you think you're going to get to meet other authors, and you all help each other, and that's not how it goes. Like nobody cares at all. And I was like, well, like that would be great. So I started a big like author promo collab called Sci-Fi Bridge, and there were like hundreds of sci-fi authors, and I started to see like 95% of the people willing to join and do stuff like that were in. And so I got really, really involved in the indie world. Did some stuff in that, but didn't really have any of my own things because they were tied up with other publishers. And it was when I was doing that I met C. Bollier, who owns Aethon with me at this point, and I writes with me as Jamie Castle. I needed a logo for Sci-Fi Bridge, and someone knew him as a guy who does art. So he made our logo, and we just kept talking, hit it off, wrote a book together and we started really pursuing indie and audio, especially. He was huge in audio, and audio is where us as writers, myself, him, really took off. I wrote Buried Goddess Saga with him. I did Children of Titan myself, bought the rights back from Random House so I could do audio with Audible and get a big narrator and stuff. And that was where we really started to take off. We wrote together for years until he actually got laid off from his job. And I hated my day job. So we both decided, all right, screw it. Let's use everything we learned and start a publisher we've always talked about. So that was how Aethon started. And it really wouldn't have been possible without our deep focus on our own careers in audio, because we had audio connections through our own writing careers that helped us get deals for authors. And, when Aethon started, it was really like, I know a lot of authors in the indie world now. I've seen all their strategies, talked to a lot of them, and the biggest issue some of them have is they just hate marketing. So it was really something where we would sign authors we knew who, they're in the indie world, but they really didn't want to do any of the marketing or anything, and their sales were starting to fail because of that, because so many people were going in. And so we, started off like that, and it just grew and grew and grew. 5 years later, we're one of the biggest digital focused and just any independent publishers with the English language. I can't say the world because I don't really know what's going on in China or places like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of where we grew from. And we went from authors who help and publish to publishers who write on the side, basically. Was the big switch, because this became kind of our full-time thing. But yeah, Audible Studios, who was our big contact at the time, was what really, really helped us kickstart. Obviously, we did a little Kickstarter for money at the beginning, but it was us being able to bring some authors, get some Audible advances, and sort of show what we could do in audio. And, we were a big part of pushing indie into the major audio sphere, like beyond just the certain audio publishers like Podium and Tantor that were willing to work with indies. We brought in Audible Studios, recorded books, Blackstone, did it ourselves. So really started opening up a lot of avenues for authors that typically were very trad and agent required, and really pushing the deals and terms authors could get to a much more favorable position because there were now so many parties. So yeah, it was a long road, but audio has been the big thing that I think helped set us apart early on.
Cool. Awesome. Because that's very interesting. In the general Discord sphere, Royal Road sphere, and so on and so forth, obviously you are the publisher that people talk about because you have a very strong tie to LitRPG, especially. You publish some of the biggest series, but I don't hear you mentioned as an audio publisher a lot. So right now, do you still do the audio yourself, or do you outsource that or subcontract that?
Yeah, I mean, so the reason for that is because we're publishing, right? Like, we don't do just audio, and that's sort of different. But no, we've done almost 400 titles through Aethon Audio that we produce ourselves. So we do a little bit of everything. We think that helps us get better deals for people too. But we do that. We work with recorded books a lot. The Audible Studios still, Dreamscape, Podium, Tanner. So we do a lot ourselves. And then if we can get someone a really great deal, we'll sub-license too. I think it helps to spread it around and see what's working, get access to new narrators and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, technically we are one of the top 15 audio publishers on Audible as Aethon Audio. But again, we just call it that, but it's still part of Aethon Books. It's not something just do on its own.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. That's a pretty wild ride. So, it almost feels a bit facetious because, I mean, as I said, people know you, but just imagine that someone hasn't done a lot of research yet, and they have written their novel. It went well on Royal Road. So, at which point should they approach you, or why should they approach you?
I mean, at which point, I would say most times we get reached out to. If it's early on, it's because they've been reached out to by another publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's easier for the audio publishers to take on more things because they're just doing audio and stuff like that. So they'll tend to reach out a lot on Railroad, and other places. But I know your audience, and then a big part of what we do is Railroad. So we'll focus there. But yeah, I mean, if you are gathering momentum, have interest in you, of course, feel free to reach out. If no one's reached out yet, just keep building because, it helps to see how big your story might get. It helps to see if people stop reading at a certain chapter, things like, important things like that. But again, we get reached out to by all sorts of different people, whether it's Railroad or elsewhere and on our submissions. So it's hard to say exactly when because different situations happen. If, sometimes we see something that has been referred to us or that we've been paying attention to that we'll reach out. We used to do that a lot more, but we're so busy now and have to be a lot more selective. So tend to have people come to us this way we can evaluate. Sorry, what was the second part?
The second part is why would people come to you, beside the fact that you're one of the biggest ones?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our track record speaks for itself. We have taken a lot of web serials or just science fiction fantasy in general and turned authors, whether they're experience or debuts, into bestsellers. We've done it already. We've worked with, people like Sherloon, First to Fire, all those guys. Their stories were already huge and we knew they were going to sell well. We just felt we could try to perfect the launch. In the case of Pirates of the Fall, we do all the rights and we kind of synced all that up with a great narrative and everything and made it one of the biggest series, not only on Kindle, but also on audio, because really focused on bringing those two things together. And we have an expertise in working Kindle and audio together. And in the genres that sell on Railroad, the market is Kindle Unlimited, and Audible. That's where they sell. They don't really have a market anywhere else. And that's our expertise. We have the contacts at those places to make sure things go smoothly. And we know how to market there, work their algorithms and everything really well. We know how to help you as an author market in the best ways possible alongside of us, without having to spend any money. Because, obviously we are full service publishers. So when you work with us, everything's paid for and there's no subtraction of those costs against anything. Our royalties are paid off the top. We pay for everything. We spend a lot on marketing and launching your series. But again, we will be hands-on in helping you, get the most out of the following you already built. And I think that's what's really been powerful about these web serials is Amazon, Audible are super flooded. Right? You see it. We do it with different genres too, right? So our expertise has come from not only LitRPG, progression fantasy, but science fiction, post-apocalyptic, and other stuff where we've seen the trends of how a genre's popularity works, where, when it starts, anyone can upload a book in it and bestseller, to where marketing and spend and targeting and writing to a certain market all become really important because there's so much content. And that, as that starts to happen, that level of support is something that I think we can really help with. Of course, these days of pirates ripping off stories and everything, we do have high level contacts at Audible, at Kindle, and that always helps, read protections on our account that you don't have on your own. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to go with a publisher, especially if you're not in a place where you could spend a lot of money, or in a place where you really know those markets or know people, right? We have a huge community of authors that we all keep everyone in touch on our Discord and email, where they're always talking about to help each other and stuff. That's, you can't see on our Discord. There's an author area where there's hundreds of our authors all helping each other and discussing ideas and everything like that. All those things help in a very crowded, very competitive market.
Yeah, Zogarth mentioned that the secret author place on this. Yeah.
sort
This
of
was pretty
deceiver.
cool. He was very positive about it. So
It was
yeah,
something because of my experience working, I think, with Random House and other publishers, where I was like they don't even introduce, like, no one cares. Like, that was something from the start, is we wanted to create places where our authors can all be our authors and help each other, and you talk business openly and stuff like that, and talk about what's going on in publishing. Sometimes we find out things first, sometimes we see it there. Whether it's something crazy with AI or or other thing.
So is there any limitation that you guys have on specific genres, or I mean, let's say like you're writing a like, is there any limitation on that? What do you not take?
We do everything science fiction and fantasy, but obviously under that umbrella, there's certain subgenres that just are going to have a better market. And so we'll look at everything. What helps us is we don't have a one size fit all contract. Every single thing we do is custom. And that could be based on your following. It could be based on other competitive offers. It could be based on genre. And that's honestly one of the most important things, is if you're writing something where we know the really tough market to break into or to reach, like science fiction was, when we started, our biggest thing. We were like biggest publisher in military science fiction, and science fiction has become very, very hard to sell compared to something like progression fantasy. And so we can tailor contracts in a way that allows us to still launch it and spend money appropriately on things to help sell them. That's a lot of extra work on our end in distributing royalties and keeping track of deals and all that, because we don't really have one contract that's the same as the other. And that's across multiple different formats too, because we also do audio and print and everything. So sort of customizable deals has really helped us do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? So that hands-on touch is, because you are still kind of indie, right? So how many people are working for you right now, if I may ask?
So it depends on what you consider working. We have there's probably 4 or 5 of us that are full-time employees, but we have a lot of people on retainer and freelancers on retainer that work only for us and stuff like that. And we have a large team in general because of that. We have a bunch of editors, a lot of artists that are on retainer, marketing people on retainer. As far as our like core company, there's 5 of us that are like official Aethon employees, but it takes a big team to do what we're doing. But again, one thing that's always been important to myself and the other owner is we never wanted to create a situation where we're giving the work of dealing with authors and everything to someone else. It takes a lot of our time, but authors are basically only ever dealing with us. So if they have a question, they can get the answer right away because we don't have to report to someone else. We don't have to do anything. So we've always wanted to be that very accessible, personable publisher where you're dealing directly with us. And it's helped us keep our team really lean, which again, saves costs, allows us to spend on selling books, and it allows us to move really fast on things, very flexible.
I mean, it's hard to scale because you're only 2 people, right? But I can definitely also see the appeal.
Scaling, one of the things, again, that is really important to us is you only release so many books a year, right? Like every week has certain releases. And if you release a bunch of stuff in the same genres, only one of them is probably going to sell. And so our model for scaling has always been about just getting the best authors, but we're been at our max for how many books we want to release per year for 2 years now, because there's, unless you jump into a new genre, you can't really add more books. There's only a certain amount of weeks a year. And that's not our model to just throw out 100 things and hope one sticks.
What do you think, by the way, speaking of genres, what do you think made sci-fi drop off so hard?
Again, there's so many subgenres of science fiction,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, we really specialize in space opera, military science fiction type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been one of the power indie genres since the birth of KU and Kindle direct publishing. So that's where all the sort of the biggest hits came from, where fantasy really, epic fantasy and all that was always still very, very controlled by Tradpub. They had all the biggest authors, and I think a lot of that goes to commercial success beyond books, right? Like when you see something get adapted into a huge epic series, you see Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, all those. And so those books, because they're long series, always take up half of the top charts bestsellers on Amazon. So getting exposure was always really hard, where science fiction, most famous science fiction properties are famous as not from being taken from a book, right? Like there's a lot of Star Wars books and stuff like that, but it's the movies and the TV shows that where those started. With sci-fi, you think with the Expanse and then really nothing else.
Yeah.
And it was always a genre that just took off for indies to the point where like you don't even see that much track of military science fiction because indies like owned that genre. So it just got really, really, really flooded. And so many indies, trying new marketing techniques, really pushing to get seen and lowering prices to the point where like selling at 99 cents in science fiction just to get the most exposure you could to hopefully get Kindle Unlimited read was the only way to release. And now Amazon has definitely started to lower the weight of those 99 cent sales towards ranking. Again, that's nothing they've said, but we release enough things where we can sort of see how certain sales are being treated to where now, like, you really have to launch at full price. And because it's so competitive, because in that genre, no one's ever had to really build their reachable following outside of newsletters. But those newsletters really only worked best because the things they were selling were on sale for so cheap. So now that they have to sell at full price, it has, the genre has really changed, and it doesn't have super reachable following that something like progression fantasy has, where there's Reddits and Discord and all sorts of stuff like science fiction. That just you got to write books and keep releasing them, and there's a few powerful authors in the genre, and beyond that, it's hard to break in. So it's just an older, more mature genre. Urban fantasy is in that similar area. Like urban fantasy is one where, like, literary agents don't even want you to try submitting that to the Big Four. It's so hard to sell.
Which is a bit sad because I like those too.
Yeah, man, they're still out there. It's a few authors pumping out content because they've been big since the beginning, and Amazon loves them, and they really corner the market in certain subgenres.
Do you think we're gonna be heading that way with LitRPG too?
It's such a unique fan base in how active they are on the internet and everywhere and reachable. So I don't know. I mean, it's definitely hard for just some debut to break in without either getting super lucky or like spending a ton of work. So I think it's in a similar place, but it tends to be a genre where we've found the readers are willing to spend money. So you never had a price gouge it to the point where then having to move to full price makes it impossible to sell. Like you did in other genres on Kindle. I think it became popular at the perfect time where the 99 cent release craze had died down. Because before that, it was like free. You would just put a book one on Amazon for free. And that was how you made money at Amazon. And then that died off because everyone was doing it and then there was no value. So yeah, I mean, I think it's already at probably the most saturated it can be, for such a niche genre. But again, it has an audience that is very active and very willing to spend to read the content they want. So I don't think it'll get as bad as those genres now.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, I guess that kind of already covers the next question, which is, what do you wish authors knew? But do you have anything else?
I mean, it's so hard to answer, but
yeah,
for authors, like in the end, you just have to keep writing. I think one of the biggest things and a bit of advice that we've been giving, if you want to bring your stuff to retailers, right? Because that's, with web serial, if you're writing towards Patreon, the idea is keep it going, right? Because you want to keep people paying that fee. So you're serializing your release. You want to keep chapters going. And, we get submissions all the time where authors are like, I have this great world plan for like 20 books. And I think a lot of times authors see that as valuable, but if you're like guaranteeing a series is going to be that long, it lowers your value a lot, because the amount of sales you need to have to carry a book series, past 3 and then 6 and not like usually people go in 3 book arcs, but to keep extending like that, most likely not going to have the sales to sustain going that far. So the best thing writers can do is create outs for yourself, right? Like your series, if it takes off, it's likely going to take off after one, like with book 1.
Yeah.
That's just how Amazon rolled. Maybe at book 2. But once you're beyond that point, like you're not going to release book 5 and all of a sudden your series gets discovered. The internet is just too quick and there's too much stuff these days. Like that's something that used to happen, but it's not really a thing anymore. So build outs for yourself as you're writing, right? Like the arc system on that web serial authors use is great, because it gives them an out of a sort of a satisfying ending where, okay, move on to something new. Because your best chance at having a hit is starting something new at that point, unless you already have that hit, right? Like Defiance of the Fall. Yeah, he could write 20 books because it's huge. Most series don't sell like that. And so you want to build yourself a chance to end it in a satisfying enough way where you can go and start something new, because again, like book 1 is your chance to have a hit again. And, say your next series hits that huge where your following explodes. All right, then relaunch your old series and then do more. But you have to identify early on if you're doing this as a hobby or if you want to be full time. If you want to be full time, being precious about your work has to really get thrown out the window, right? Like you can't just force yourself to finish a 12 book series that's not making anything. That's so much time. And you have to give yourself a chance to start over and and have new sales and build your following and stuff like that. So, and that's always the most important thing I tell people is like really identify how you want to do this. If you already have an amazing day job and you're happy with this being a side thing, and you're fast enough at writing where it can be a side thing and still produce, then you can take more risks and kind of do what you want.
Yeah.
But if this is your full-time thing and you need these paychecks from Amazon, from Patreon every month, like be smart about what you're spending your time writing.
Yeah, kind of in that same, we a very huge impact of the whole 20K to 20 books, 50K crowd, pushing out one book after the other. Do you sometimes wish that people were following the web serial format less and when submitting to you? And editing more?
We have tons of authors that don't, so it's not really an issue for us. We work with we work with a lot of authors on Railroad. We also work with no one that writes science fiction for us. Authors does web serial. We have tons of fantasy authors that are off that style. So no, we don't really mind. I think it lends itself really to progression fantasy anyway. Like tons of authors, like Eric Ugland is doing a series for us. And, when I opened it and saw it and he submitted and I saw the chapters and how short they were, how they all work, I was like, he could just put this right on Row and it wouldn't have to change at all. And so I do think the genre just lends itself to that format way.
Yeah.
So no, I don't mind at all. It's a great way to get developmental feedback for free also.
Yeah, that's true.
No one's going to be harsher on you than someone reading it for free. That's just a weird fact.
Yeah, and getting that thick skin has been a challenge, but it's definitely been worth it, right?
Yeah.
So I think the best part about Railroad is getting that feedback early, because chances are you are not going to be the next short alone. Because I mean, cool would be cool, right? But every month there's maybe one person who hits Rising Stars and gets like past. Excuse me. One person who hits Rising Stars and hits past 3.5k.
Followers. Yeah.
Followers, yeah. Right. I think it's also pretty decent, but yeah. So you're probably not gonna hit like 11k. I think the last person who
last I think is Return to the Roombound Professor.
Yeah, I think it was Actus, and before that, I think it was Miles English with Box and Isekai. So I don't know.
Maybe Demonic Tree got pretty big too, but yeah, it's a lot more rare now than it used to be. But again, you don't need to have 10,000 followers to have a hit, right? Things that are really, really big on Railroad aren't necessarily going to be big on Amazon. I mean, one of our biggest series ever is System Chain by Sunrise CV. He's got a lot of followers now, but it was like 7,000 or something at the time, and you know, that series is huge for us. So that's not the only thing, right? Like in the end, it's just a number, and it still has to go somewhere and sell. So, I mean, what that proves is just that the story is good enough that people keep writing. Like I said, there is no one that will be more critical of your work than someone who's reading for free. And I don't understand why. It may be like just something because they had a title in or something. I don't know what it is, but they tend to critique you with brutal honesty. Sometimes it's something that's not useful. A lot of times it is.
Obviously, there's more questions there, but I think we kind of have to move on, because the bridge from web serials to then having that in a graphic format has all been crossed a few times, not just in Railroad spaces, but obviously in stuff like Solo Leveling, all these manhwa that really started the gamelet genre, right? I mean, kind of ish with dot hack, stuff like that, way back.
I remember that show.
Right? Yeah. When I was a kid, I remember playing that game.
There was a game too. Yeah, it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, right. But yeah, okay. So now the big thing. I mean, I've read it on your Discord server first. You have actually published with a real, live, breathing, existing comic book publisher. I mean, you've hinted at that being a thing for a while. So just tell me all about it.
Yeah, so we sort of identified probably like 2 years ago that we thought the webcomic space was really perfect for this type of stuff. Progression, RPG, really kind of action fantasy in general, where when we started, we did so much science fiction. It never really was an outlet for us because for whatever reason, there's not a lot of science comic publishers, and no one's really looking for it every time we talk to them. And this was something that we identified and wanted to start building inroads with. But again, the way we approach business is the same with audio, is we don't just like to try one thing. That's what happens, because there's no value in that. You don't get anything out of it. Something can be a hit, something can fail, and that's just one thing. So we wanted to hit this hard enough where we could actually evaluate this as a method. And so we built up for a long time. That's why someone said on our Discord the other day, it was like, all of a sudden I started hearing Aethon comic stuff. Where the hell did that comic come from? And it was just stuff that we've been building for a long time. We started building a relationship with people at Webtoon for a very long time, and did a few full licensing deals, where the difference is between that and what we're doing now. Full licensing deal basically is they're buying the rights, right? It's like a TV film deal, and they're doing it. Your control goes out the window and all that stuff. We were part of an early slate of their doing, where we talk with them a bunch and sort of we're part of a group of early publishers and agents trying to convince them like, hey, like, you guys could be doing really well adapting Western IPs, but that's not something they've ever really done. And they were at the same time really focused on trying to bring their following from and their IPs from the East to the West, basically. And so we were in early conversations because we had some things that they wanted of doing that. And we just kept cultivating that relationship with them and started talking with them to try to explain the idea and the vision we had for how this could work. And the thing you'll find with Tapas Webtoon and everything is they do great work, but they can't be big corporations. It's hard for them to be agile and fast.
Yep.
And in the same way we saw in audio, like we can push things and shop things and move things faster in audio than a corporation can, because there's so many moving parts, so many approvals needed, everything. And so we brought on Actus, and people now he's like the head of our comic division. And he's super passionate about webcomics, and together with him and Steve, we sort of built out our relationships first and did some licensing deals with Tapas, Webtoon, Voice Me, and everything to really get the lay of the land, what everyone's offering, what every platform is thinking is fair. And at the same time, started building relationships with studios of our own, art studios, not that we own, art studios, to start developing comics for things that we thought were a great fit at the gate. And we just sort of start building from there. And the thing we learned fast is, even though we can move fast, these things take like a year to produce. And so as we were producing them, we started learning more and more contacts and everything. And again, just like in audio, instead of being tentative about it, we've got all that invested millions of dollars into probably 20 plus webcomic originals that are going to be coming out over the next year or two, from hit series that not only we publish, but authors outside of ours. So we made an announcement about that, where we invested in a huge portion of a major webcomic studio called Laura Pursuit, who we're doing a ton with. Huge series, Defiance in the Fall, Bastion, things, again, Bastion we don't publish, but we wanted to bring a range of authors to this to really test out if this can work. And so Laura Pursuit is a web comic studio, and we're doing a ton with them. We're fully partnered with them on the webcomic side. Cool. And at the same time, the guys at Vault Comics, through our entertainment agent, who's their agent as well, we've known them for a while. And as we started developing all these webcomics, we talked with them and we sort of realized, well, like, these things get print too. They can. And so we have a lot of content we can bring to them, and they wanted someone who can do book versions of a lot of their biggest comics. And so the fit made a lot of sense.
Nice. And
it just all happened at the same time as far as announcing the deals. Like, had just announced that we partnered with Laura Pursuit to do a huge slate of webcomics. And a month later, we announced that we invested in part of Vault to partner with them as their publishing partner and stuff. So it just really luck that it all came out at the same time. But what we did, we wanted to create sort of an Aethon Comics branch that was a fully self-sustaining thing, with a partner at each level, from digital to potential print. Right? Because you work with Webtoon, you work with Tapas. The focus is the digital comic. Yeah. But there's always print rights involved in that. And they can exercise those rights. And now we have a partner that is right there that can definitely exercise the rights. So it gives a ton of options, and sort of opportunities for our authors and the people we work with that they might not necessarily be able to get on their own. And that, like you said, like, why sign with you? And, that's a question we always ask ourselves as the markets evolve and, people self-publish and stuff. And again, like, self-publishing is very hard. You really only see the successes, but for every single huge hit you see where someone did everything on their own, there's like 1,000 books that didn't sell a single copy. So it is hard to tell how hard it is to actually self-publish. But we do like to always ask ourselves that question as we, again, build out our offering. We do some merch now, some other things, but comics has been somewhere where we really thought we had grown big enough to invest that huge amount of money into growing something, which again is total risk. These might not make anything, right? Because, webcomics cost an insane amount to make. It's like making an independent film. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we have a lot of projects. I'm not going to list them all here, but
you can always find them out at
if you're a progression fan, as a LitRPG fan, you'll see most of your favorite series coming webcomics too.
Didn't you also like sign? I mean, obviously, like I definitely saw Primal Hunter. I definitely saw First the Fire. Didn't you also sign all the skills?
Yes.
Oh, right. And you signed All Great. I was recorded as a farmer too. So
yeah, so those will all be coming in our Laurel Pursuit partnership, and they're doing awesome. They do incredible art. So that they'll be doing a bunch of those huge titles, and then there's a few things that we haven't announced yet, just because they're with other studios and stuff. But yeah, we want to make Western IP a thing on Webtoon, and we targeted Webtoon because they are the biggest, and they have the most people there. So if you're gonna try this out, we're trying to aim for the top and hope we can grab a lot of their audience.
Here's the hoping, right? Could be that all these gaijin comics are actually doing pretty well. That could be really cool, actually. And now that you actually explained the business reasoning behind it, I'm super stoked for it, because it completely makes sense.
Right? Yeah, and in the end, like they can drive sales to your ebook.
Exactly.
Like to your ebook, your audiobook, because people are very impatient. People like seeing adaptations of how they visualize things, but also like, you get through 10 episodes of a webcomic and then you have to wait. You could also jump over and read the entire ebook series, or listen to the entire series, and then come back to so there's some synergy there between the different formats.
And of course, obviously, as soon as, I'm just speculating, right? So I'm for sure you have thought about it, but as soon as you have like this huge market and then another completely almost unexplored market, which is the Western webcomic kind of market, kind of a clash and then expand and flow together, then of course suddenly it's like the social phenomenon, and then TV adaptations and stuff like that is not that far apart. So
the answer is TV film adaptations are always stubborn, and it's just such a shot. Again, we have an involvement with different companies in that. We have something with Sony and everything with the strikes, and there's so much that goes into what gets picked that honestly, to make any deal for anything based upon that is just foolish. It's a way to run your company into the ground, because you could have something perfect, everyone attached, and it could still fall through for some random reason.
Like someone gets the flu and then doesn't read the email at the right time. I've seen it happen.
Because it's not just like books where there's infinite shelf space on the internet. It's more like traditional publishing, where the reason they sign so little is because Barnes & Noble has a limited shelf space, and 3/4 of that shelf space is being taken up by famous people. And George Martin and stuff like that. So it's more similar to that. There's just it's just so expensive.
Right. Yeah. I don't think many people even know this, like how much money it costs to make something like that. Even if you're using a lot of like special effects and
animation is even more. It takes longer. It's a crap ton of money. So anime adaptations are tough.
Yeah, I think Nimona, for example, cost more than some like AAA movies. but I'm not sure about that. All right. Stories that surprised you in the past.
One came out this week, actually, which is All the Dust That Falls, which is the story of an isekai. I'll call it a Roomba here. Legally, you can't say Roomba, but essentially, electronic vacuum who basically gets isekai'd into a castle and cleans it and defends it and stuff. And that, like, as soon as I saw the cover for that, I was like, we need this. It's like, I think it's the cherry on top of the ridiculous reincarnated as things. Like, I've seen one where you're reincarnated as a rock, which, okay, maybe that is crazier, but like, I think a Roomba win. And then like our team read it and everything, were like, wait, this is actually really funny and good. And so that it's always hard. We've done so many things. It's always hard to think about.
And so that
what
deal
was
was
the
done
surprise?
and dusted.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, I kept telling everyone I need this, and then finally got in touch with the author because, and it turned out to be probably my favorite cover that we've ever done. Like everything about it just lended it to being such a funny concept.
It is. So you can look it up. All the Dust That Falls. The cover just recently released, and it is a perfect mixture of the color composition, how the vacuum cleaner in the background kind of swallows stuff in with this like huge glowing red vacuum box. It is really cool. It's a really cool cover.
Yeah. So I think that one again just surprised me that it existed. You know, but now I feel like that one did start sort of a lot of people trying to do a crazy reincarnated as story.
I mean, come on. Okay, it's probably not the case. I don't know. I haven't spoken to XK yet, but Demonic Tree, wasn't that at the same time, kind of? So we'll see.
Yeah, I guess so. But there's precedent for tree reincarnation stories. Not only like Tree of Aeons and that, and then there's a couple of Eastern IPs that are like that as well.
And like the idea of like doing it as like an evil tree. I personally really enjoy the story. It's my read in the bathtub story.
But yeah, but you always, I mean, and again, you always see like, look, there's a talking tree in Pocahontas and everything. So I don't think that is out of the realm as a talking vacuum. Right, like it would be like making an entire book about a Star Wars, like one of those mouse bots that cleans the floor.
I'm going to make the obvious pun here. That has been done before on Facebook, but it just really sucks you in. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Awesome. Okay, cool. With that being said, I do think I kind of want to ask you one more question before we go into shout outs, and that is, can you share with us your company mission?
Yeah, pretty simple, is to make our authors as much as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've always been proud of how fair and author friendly our terms are. Mm-hmm. And really trying to be as author first as we can be while also running a business that needs to be. Again, like we can't do as much millions as we're doing for webcomics.
Yeah.
Our books aren't doing well. And if our books are doing well, it means the author's making a lot. And I think that's, sometimes I see people online say, oh, I don't write for money. I write to get my story out there to as many people as possible. Well, getting your story out there means you're making money.
Yeah.
Like,
don't fight it.
Unless you're doing a totally free web serial where you're not monetizing it anywhere with a subscription or Patreon or anything. Like getting more readers on a retailer when you're selling a book means making money. And again, that's why we have always been big about synchronizing ebook and audio and print. And now trying to get people into other formats and stuff like that, because, there's only so many ways you can monetize a single intellectual property.
Yeah.
And the more we can do, the more our authors make. The more authors make, the more we make, and the more we can cool, fun stuff like making comics and signing more things and stuff like that. So it's a simple goal, and it sounds more businessy than it intends to be, but I think it really has to be core of what you do as a publisher in order to grow in the right ways.
Rising tide raises all ships, because the more comics are out there that you produce, the more chances are that maybe your book can also be turned into a comic at some point.
Yeah, and that's why we are starting with a lot of big property, because you got to prove the market, and the better they do, I think the more chances somewhere like Webtoon for just full licensing will take on you. So,
all right, cool, Rhett. This has been amazing. Do you want to do some shout outs?
Sure. I'll do some shout outs. Obviously, you can find anything we do on Aethon-books.com. We have a lot of announcements on there that are going to give a lot more information about what's going on in comics in our blog section. Then we do have an Aethon comics section of our site we're building, but again, we can't really put stuff there until we're legally allowed. So, or until there's something to show. So there's a lot of stuff out there on our blog that'll give you information about that. As far as shout outs, I think we did it. All of Dust That Falls is a really, really weird book that I think people will love if they're willing to give it a try.
It fills a vacuum.
Yeah. Again, I know human stuff tends to sell best. Like we released Chrysalis, where the main character is an N. That's the comment I constantly see is people saying, like, I didn't know I wanted to read a book about an N.
Do you market that as, All the Dust That Falls, do you market it as Monster MC or what?
I don't know. Sort of, just because like that is just a thing, like non-human MC or something. I mean, I think it's more comedy, and that's sort of how we have marketed it. But you definitely check that out, because, like, again, there is such thing as writing to market, and like you said, humans sell best. But sometimes there's a weird thing out there that deserves to be read. And then next week, the one we were talking about, Reborn as Demonic Tree by Excarnation comes out. So we're doing like non-human November. Sort of, by accident.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to talk to Travis about that, because at the end of the month you're going to release book 10, right?
Yeah.
You put monsters. Okay, cool. Awesome.
That there's a lot of that coming out this month, and I think people are going to like that book as well. So check that out too.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to shout out Actus, just because I can. He was here representing you before you could make the time, and I think he did a really explain the comics a bit, kind of also how you as a publisher from a different side of you.
Cool.
There was overlap, of course, but I do think that the publisher who has 2 podcasts with me, I think that's okay. I hope I'm not brown nosing. But we'll see what the Reddit comments say. I
figured he was coming on as an author. So who knows if
he was also doing that, so it was a perfect storm. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next.
Yeah, thank you.